When we talk about compliments, it's easy to imagine the familiar or almost rehearsed words that dominate casual interactions. You're beautiful. You look amazing. These phrases are polite, even kind, but they often hover on the surface like a thin layer of paint on glass. They reflect something visible, but they rarely penetrate deep enough to reveal what lies beneath. The truth is, most women are so accustomed to hearing this kind of praise that it almost ceases to hold value. It feels like a script, something anyone could say without ever truly knowing who she is. And that is where the distinction lies, the difference between flattery that glances at her appearance and acknowledgement that truly sees her. Human beings, at their core, long to be seen for their essence, not simply for the mask they present to the world. When a compliment fails to reach beyond the obvious, it unintentionally reduces a woman to something fleeting. Her physical form in a single moment. It says nothing about her mind, her character, or the uniqueness of her spirit. Think about it. If someone praises only what is temporary, what message does it send about everything else she has built within herself? The intellect she has sharpened, the resilience she has carried, the compassion she has cultivated. These deserve recognition too. To bypass them is to overlook the most remarkable part of who she is. That's why the compliments that resonate most deeply are the ones that carry intention. They require observation. They demand presence. They are rooted not in what is obvious, but in what is revealed when you truly pay attention. For example, when you tell a woman, the way you analyze situations always gives me a new perspective. Or, I love how you notice details no one else does. You're not just admiring her mind, you're proving that you actually listen to her, that you value her thoughts enough to let them reshape your own. This is a compliment that does more than flatter. It affirms her identity. Psychologists often remind us that the need to be seen and understood is one of the deepest human desires. In relationships, romantic or otherwise, this is magnified. A woman doesn't want to be endlessly reminded of the beauty she already knows she possesses. It's worth asking ourselves why so many men avoid going beyond the obvious. Sometimes it's a matter of habit. Sometimes it's fear of saying the wrong thing. But more often, it's simply a lack of awareness. Yet awareness is exactly what creates intimacy. When you choose to notice more, to speak to what is not immediately visible, you are offering something rare, a mirror that reflects her entire being, not just her surface. And perhaps this is the first lesson that compliments have the power to either skim across the surface or dive into the depths. One leaves her momentarily flattered, the other leaves her profoundly seen. The choice, as always, rests in how deeply we are willing to look. If there is one compliment that women secretly crave yet rarely receive, it is the acknowledgement of their mind. Too often, the world conditions us to value women primarily through the lens of appearance. Even when intelligence is praised, it is sometimes framed as an accessory, a nice addition to beauty rather than a central part of her identity. But to truly recognize a woman's intellect is to affirm a part of her that is deeply personal, something she has cultivated through years of experience, education, and reflection. Her mind is not something given, it is something built. And to notice it is to recognize her agency, her voice, and her place in shaping the world. Think about the subtle power of telling a woman, "I love the way you think." Those 6 words carry more weight than any comment about her hair or her smile ever could. They signal that you are not merely listening to her words, but engaging with the ideas behind them. They tell her that her thoughts are not just background noise, but something that expands your perspective, something worth pausing for. Compliments like this are powerful because they affirm that her mind matters. And when someone's mind is seen, the person feels seen. We live in a society that too often prizes women for silence, for politeness, for fitting neatly into the expectations of others. To compliment her mind is to break that mold. It is to say, your voice has value, your perspective matters. It is not about empty flattery, but about specificity. Noticing the clarity with which she explains complex ideas, or the creativity she brings to solving problems, or even the empathy embedded in her reasoning. These are observations that show you are truly present with her. They prove that you are listening not just to reply, but to understand. Psychologically, this form of affirmation taps into what many call the need for significance. Every human being wants to know that their thoughts have weight in the lives of others. For women who have historically been dismissed or underestimated intellectually, this recognition is not only validating but profoundly liberating. It allows her to feel safe expressing herself fully without shrinking or diluting her ideas for fear of being overlooked. In relationships, this creates trust. In friendships, it creates respect. And in love, it creates intimacy that goes far beyond attraction. And yet, this kind of compliment requires more than casual attention. It requires presence. You cannot genuinely admire someone's intellect without first choosing to slow down and observe it. It is an act of listening, of reflection, of engagement. It asks you to move past assumptions and pay attention to what makes her perspective unique. In doing so, you give a gift far more enduring than admiration of beauty. You give recognition of identity. So perhaps the real challenge is this: are we willing to look past the surface and speak to the mind behind it? Because when you affirm a woman's intellect, you are not only complimenting her, you are empowering her. And empowerment is the kind of compliment that lasts a lifetime. There is a quiet strength that often goes unnoticed in women's lives. It is not always dramatic or loud. Sometimes it shows itself in the way she gets up each morning after a sleepless night, or in the way she continues to support others even when she herself feels weary. Too often, this resilience is mistaken for ease, as though she is simply good at coping. as though the struggles she carries don't weigh heavily on her shoulders. But to acknowledge a woman's strength is to see the battles she endures in silence, and to recognize the dignity with which she meets them. That recognition can feel like oxygen. It tells her, I see not just the polished version of you, but the courage it takes to be here. A compliment on strength is never about comparing her to an image of toughness or stoicism. It's about honoring the human reality of perseverance. It's about noticing how she keeps her integrity intact under pressure, or how she maintains kindness when bitterness would be easier. It's about valuing her ability to hold space for others while navigating her own storms. These are not small acts. They are testaments of character. And when you say to a woman, I admire the way you carry yourself through difficulty, you affirm something far deeper than beauty or charm. You affirm the unshakable resilience that defines her story. There is a profound psychological need in every person to have their struggles acknowledged. Rather than dismissed or minimized, women in particular are often expected to perform strength invisibly, to juggle responsibilities without complaint, to absorb the weight of expectations quietly. So when someone chooses to pause and recognize her resilience, it becomes a rare kind of validation. It is no longer about the image she presents, but about the unseen work she has done to sustain herself and those around her. That acknowledgement does not make her stronger. She already is strong. But it does make her feel seen in the fullness of her humanity. Philosophically, we might say that to recognize strength is to honor the paradox of fragility and courage that coexist within all of us. A woman's resilience is not the absence of vulnerability, it is the choice to move forward despite it. To compliment, this is to acknowledge the truth of her existence, not as flawless, but as deeply human. It shifts the compliment from admiration of appearance to reverence for character. And when reverence is present, relationships deepen, because to revere someone is to respect them not only for what they offer to you, but for who they are when no one is watching. This kind of recognition does more than make her feel valued. It changes the atmosphere of trust. It creates a space where she doesn't have to pretend to be unbreakable, because her worth is not tied to never bending. Instead, her worth is tied to the beauty of how she rises again and again. So here is the challenge. When was the last time you truly acknowledged the resilience of a woman in your life? Not her accomplishments, not her beauty, but the strength she carries silently. Because once you do, you'll realize that in recognizing her strength, you're not only honoring her, you're honoring the courage it takes for any human being to exist authentically in this world. One of the most overlooked but profoundly meaningful compliments a woman can receive is recognition of the impact she has on others. We live in a culture that often measures worth by visible achievements or external validation, yet the quiet influence someone has on the emotional lives of those around them can be far more transformative. A woman may not always realize the extent to which her presence changes the atmosphere in a room, or how her words linger in the minds of others long after the conversation ends. To acknowledge this is to affirm her ability to shape the world not just through action, but through being. Think about the power of telling a woman, "You make people feel at ease when you're around," or "Your encouragement gave me the confidence to take that step." These are not compliments about beauty or strength, but about legacy, the invisible threads she weaves into the lives of others. They show that her influence is not passive, but active, not accidental, but deeply felt. And because these acknowledgements speak to her effect on the world, they reach a part of her identity that is rarely celebrated. The psychology here is important. Human beings thrive on a sense of significance, the belief that our existence matters beyond ourselves. When you highlight the way a woman impacts those around her, you are giving her meaning far beyond her private battles. This is a compliment that does more than flatter. It reveals her place in the human story. It's also worth noting how rarely women hear this kind of recognition. Compliments about appearance are common. Remarks about achievements are frequent. But acknowledgement of the subtle, invisible influence she has on people's emotions, confidence, or sense of belonging, those are scarce. Yet they may be the most enduring of all, because they remind her of the ways she uplifts others simply by being herself. When you give this kind of compliment, you are not just noticing her, you are holding up a mirror to her contribution in the world. And when someone sees their impact reflected back at them, it can change the way they carry themselves. It gives them permission to stand taller, not out of vanity, but out of the quiet assurance that they matter. So ask yourself this: how often do you pause to tell the women in your life not just that they are beautiful or strong, but that they make others feel loved, safe, inspired? Because in the end, the greatest compliment you can offer is not about what she looks like or even what she does. It's about the difference she makes in the lives she touches. That, more than anything, is what lingers. At the heart of every compliment that truly matters lies one essential truth: the human need to be seen, not just looked at, not just noticed in passing, but deeply, fully seen for who we are. When we peel back the layers of flattery and performance, what women, and indeed all people, desire most is to be recognized in their entirety. This is why the compliments we've spoken about carry so much power. They go beyond the surface. They step into the realm of identity, of essence, of soul. They acknowledge not only what is visible, but what is meaningful. To be seen beyond the surface is to feel validated in the parts of ourselves we often question. A woman may know she is intelligent, yet doubt whether others appreciate her mind. She may be strong, yet wonder if anyone notices the cost of carrying that strength. She may touch lives quietly, yet never realize the depth of her influence until someone names it aloud. Compliments that reach these places dissolve those doubts. They act as reminders that her worth is not conditional, not fragile, and not limited to what the eye can perceive. Psychologists describe this as the hunger for recognition, one of the most universal human drives. We want our inner worlds to be acknowledged, not just the curated versions we present outwardly. When a compliment addresses those deeper truths, it meets this need directly. It bridges the gap between how a woman experiences herself privately and how others perceive her publicly. And in that bridge, connection is born. This is why such compliments don't just flatter, they transform. Philosophically, being seen is tied to the idea of dignity. To see someone in their fullness is to honor their humanity. It is to resist reducing them to a single quality, whether that be beauty, success, or even resilience. Instead, it is to embrace the paradoxes, the contradictions, the complexity that makes them whole. For women who have so often been reduced to narrow roles, objects of desire, caretakers, symbols of perfection, being recognized in their complexity is profoundly liberating. It tells her she is allowed to exist as she is, multifaceted, imperfect, yet undeniably valuable. And here lies the responsibility for all of us. To truly see another person requires effort. It asks us to move beyond autopilot, beyond easy words, and into real presence. It means listening with intention, noticing what is often overlooked, and speaking truth into the spaces where silence has lingered too long. When we do this, our words gain weight. They stop being filler and start being fuel. The greatest irony is that many people believe seeing someone deeply requires extraordinary insight, when in reality, it only requires paying attention to her thoughts, to her struggles, to her quiet contributions. It is about choosing to notice and then choosing to name what you notice with sincerity. So perhaps the question we leave ourselves with is simple but demanding. When was the last time you made someone feel truly seen? Because in the end, the most powerful compliment you can give is not about appearance or even achievement. It is the gift of recognition. And recognition, when given with honesty, has the power to change how someone sees themselves forever. It is worth asking if these are the kinds of compliments that women long for, why do so few men offer them? The truth is not always simple, but it often comes down to two things: habit and fear. Habit, because we have been conditioned by culture to think of compliments as primarily about appearance. From magazines to movies, the language of admiration has been reduced to beauty and charm. Fear, because deeper compliments require vulnerability. To notice and articulate the strength of someone's resilience, or the influence of their presence, or the brilliance of their mind, means you have to pay attention, you have to care, and you have to risk being genuine. And sincerity always carries risk. For many men, there is a hesitation that comes with breaking the script. They worry that such words will be misunderstood, or that they will sound overly sentimental, or even that their observations won't be valued. Yet, in holding back, they deny both themselves and the women in their lives the richness of authentic connection. Compliments that live on the surface are easy, they'd demand little. But the ones that reach the heart require awareness, courage, and honesty, and that is why they are so rare and so transformative. It is also important to recognize how society has shaped men's emotional language. Many have not been taught to express appreciation beyond the physical. They may feel admiration for a woman's intellect, her resilience, or her impact, but they lack the vocabulary or the confidence to articulate it. This silence, however unintentional, can create distance, because what goes unspoken is often assumed absent. If a woman never hears recognition of her deeper qualities, she may begin to believe they are unseen, even when they are silently admired. The challenge then is for men to relearn how to notice and how to name what they notice. It does not take poetic eloquence. It takes sincerity. It takes slowing down long enough to reflect on what a woman brings into your life or into the world, and then having the courage to speak it. These are not compliments to be given casually or carelessly, but with intention. And when offered this way, they can shift the foundation of a relationship. They can turn admiration into trust, attraction into respect, and love into something profound and enduring. There is also a deeper responsibility here. When we choose to acknowledge others for who they truly are, we participate in reshaping the culture of recognition itself. We push back against a shallow norm that reduces people to appearances and instead cultivate a culture where essence is valued over surface. Men who dare to give these kinds of compliments are not only affirming women, they are redefining what it means to honor another human being. So perhaps the final reminder is this: the words you choose have the power to either skim the surface of someone's identity or to reach the depths of their being. One kind of compliment is quickly forgotten. The other becomes part of how a person sees themselves. And in the end, the question we all must ask is, do we want our words to vanish like echoes, or do we want them to live on as truth?